y'all, it's Anna with Always Right, and in today's little read and wrap-up, I'm going to be talking about the books that I read during July and August. I'm going to give a brief, description of the book, and then I'll kind of give, a suggestion or a not suggestion. I actually have two that I did not finish, DNF'd the books, and I'm very sad about it, but that averages out to about one a month of staying on par, The first book I read was actually A Court of Thorns and Roses. And if you don't know what this book is, because I really didn't when I bought it, it is a book that's basically like a young adult fantasy retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but with fairies. Yes. This book follows Feyre as she kind of gets kidnapped by a Fey Lord, aka, the Beast, and she has to kind of make sense of the Fey world she's been exposed and entered into. I actually have the physical for this book. I also had the audiobook, so I would kind of switch off depending on if I was gardening or if I was relaxing. So this was a very interesting, very fun read. I will admit, the very beginning of the book was a drag, and that's actually why I had to look into the audiobook for this, is because it was pretty boring. It was slow going for quite a while, so I muscled through it. This is a Sarah J. Maas book, and if you don't know what that means, it means she kind of writes more kind of new adult books, if you will. That's kind of what she's been doing, and new adult books is like young adult writing, but with porn. This book, I don't believe, has any heavy scenes, but it is the beginning of a series for her, and the next few books in the series do get a little porny. So this one, acceptable, read to your children. The other ones after it, don't read to your children. Would I suggest this book? Yes. I thought it was very interesting. Her writing style is actually a lot like my writing style used to be when I was younger, when I was in college and writing and still writing fan fictions. That's one thing that I noticed about this book, but I've got to move on and I got to stop switching sides with this book because it's driving me crazy. So that's it. The next book I read was Dragon Teeth by Michael Crichton. Here's the title. Can you tell what they used as the selling point for the book? Here, I'll hold up another one so you can guess. Okay, so before I get into what this book is actually about, yes, I actually do have 2 physical copies, and I listened to the audiobook on Libby. I think I bought one at Barnes & Noble for $4 or $6. Or my Barnes & Noble has a major clearance section, so I'm pretty sure that's where I bought this one from. And then this one I bought at a thrift store because I forgot I had it. So one of them is going to the library, but this is a very thin book. Like a Sarah J. Maas compared to him. So Dragon Teeth is a total of 283 pages. A Court of Thorn and Roses is 416. If you've read Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, it's not about that. They use this image of a T-Rex skull, and it looks really cool. It looks really interesting. You're like, oh my gosh, there's a cowboy. Are they gonna do Jurassic Park, but ye old cowboy Jurassic Park? No. I'm just gonna read the inside flap because I didn't when I bought this book both times. The year is 1876. War and Indian tribes still populate America's western territories, even as long as gold rush towns begin to mark the landscape. I'll hold one up while I'm just reading from the other. Why not? While the civilized East debates Mr. Darwin's new theory called evolution, 2 monomaniacal paleontologists pillage the Wild West, hunting for dinosaur fossils while surveying, deceiving, and sabotaging each other in a rivalry that will come to be known as the Bone Wars. So Michael Crichton read some letters between these 2 real-life paleontologists back in the 1870s, and he wrote a fan fiction. He created a character, and he put that character in their world and interacted with them. The thing is that his character is a college student, and he signs up to go on with the richer more kind of successful of the two paleontologists. That paleontologist gets suspicious of him, thinks he's working for the other paleontologist, so he kicks him out of his envoy without telling him while they're in like Cheyenne, so he can still go back home east. However, the second paleontologist picks him up for his journey, and it's a whirlwind. Once I realized that this was Michael Crichton basically not writing sci-fi, just writing a basic fiction book, I was able to get into it. So if you pick up this book with the idea of it's Michael Crichton writing fan fiction about two paleontologists, that's great. You'll like it. It's very interesting. It's a very quick read, I found. The reason I say that is look at this page. It's just like enter, 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 enter. So they're not really long paragraphs. It's not dragging descriptions. It's very fun. I liked it. He wrote this one when he was alive, spoilers, and he wrote it like before he wrote Jurassic Park. If the bio at the end is correct. Oh my god, this book was $29 originally? Okay, that's why I never bought it on full price. Crichton died in 2008, as you can see right here in his little bio. He's a little cute. He died in 2008, and this was published in 2017. Yeah, this is not like his sci-fi books at all. Would I suggest it? Yes, just don't go into it thinking, oh, this is gonna be beautiful sci-fi. They're gonna make movies about it. They might make a movie about it, but I don't really know. I really enjoyed it when I accepted the fact that there was no sci-fi and that it was just like people. It was the peoples in the book. Okay, so all the rest of the books I did for audiobooks because I got sick with the COVID, and so I couldn't concentrate on like words or anything, but I could listen to stories. So that's what I did. The next book that I read/listened to was Where the Crawdads Sing. I didn't really know what to expect out of this book. I know that it's been at the top of the New York Times bestseller list for a long time, and I was like, well, fine, I will add it to my hold list, and I will listen to it when it becomes available, because it was like, it'll be 3 months before it's available. It was available in like 3 weeks. So Where the Crawdad Sings is about 12 hours long as an audiobook, so that means it's a pretty healthy, pretty substantial book. So this book's hard for me to describe because it takes place over 2 timelines. One timeline is the main character growing up, and that takes place in about the 50s. And then the second timeline, which becomes the only timeline, like they merge together, takes place in the 1969s and up until 1970. So basically what happens is you're reading this book and you learn about this young girl, Kaya, who her family just kind of starts leaving her. Her mom leaves first, and that leaves her with her 3 or 4 siblings, I don't remember the exact number, and her father. And all the siblings start drifting away in the first few chapters, and then it's just Kaya and her father until her father disappears too. So for the 1950s through the 1960s timeline, you're watching Kaya grow up, you're watching Kaya survive, and it's so fascinating. I loved that part of it. It was just so interesting to watch and be like, oh my gosh, what is she gonna do next? Because the second timeline takes place in 1969. And in that timeline, there's a murder in the town that Kaya's growing up in. And there are things that tie in from Kaya's growing up timeline to the murder timeline until Kaya is arrested and is suspected of murdering this man. I highly suggest it. There is kind of a murder mystery aspect. There's a court trial. I love how it was done. I loved how the voice actor got through it. I thought it was fascinating. It was just such an interesting book. And Kaya is such an interesting, inspiring character. So needless to say, Where the Crawdad Sings is my favorite book out of these last 2 months. I absolutely adored it. I ripped through it in I think in about 5 days. And it was entertaining. It's a little jarring the first few times. It goes between like the 1950s and the 1969 timeline, but you get used to it and it starts making sense. Everything starts tying together. The next book that I read was The Hunger Games. And I will admit, At the time of this book being popular, in like 2009, 2010, I was like hipster. I was like, oh, I won't like it because it's just popular fiction. Oh. I tried to actually read it when I was younger and when it was like really popular. My friends really liked it and I just couldn't. It's first person present, which is just, I just don't like it at all. First person can deal with it. Present tense cannot deal with it. Cannot get into it. It's so distracting and I'm just like, ooh, I can't do it. I want to just stop. I'm gonna stop. Basically, The Hunger Games is a dystopian novel where there is a annual Hunger Game where 24 young kids enter into an arena and one makes it out. The kids kill each other or they die to kind of natural causes. And how these kids are chosen, because it's not just like they're like, hey kids, you want a job? It's not how it works. In this, they are reaped from the 12 districts that make up Panem, which is like America post-apocalypse, aka the dystopian in it. They reap the kids by, you know, putting all the kids' names between the ages of 12 and 18 in a giant bowl. And you can put your name in more if you're really hungry and you actually need food, hence the Hunger Games. And that draw out the names and then you enter in the Hunger Games and you usually die. And it follows Katniss Everdeen as she volunteers to save her sister. Oh, if you are a writer and you're trying to kind of see what makes books work, The Hunger Games is an amazing example of this. The Hunger Games is often referenced when people are discussing like plots and beats and storylines, like Save the Cat mentions the Hunger Games quite a bit. And as you're reading the Hunger Games, you can see where the beats start hitting in the book, and it's really interesting. So I really enjoyed reading / listening to this book because I can listen to someone present tense. First person, I can't do it if I'm reading it. It just annoys me. I say. Ugh. The next book I read was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. In my last kind of reading update video, I talked about how I read Fairest, which is kind of like the 7.5 book. It explores the evil queen's side of the story and how she came to be in this universe that Cinder is in. Cinder is the first book in the series that leads up to Fairest. Going into Cinder, I already knew about the evil queen, I already knew her history, and I already knew just how terrible she was. So Cinder is a sci-fi retelling of Cinderella. So it follows Cinder, of course, Cinderella, aka, and she is a mechanic and she's a cyborg. And in this society, cyborgs are seen as lesser humans, and there's a plague going around that was started by the Lunars, the people that live on the moon. That's where the evil queen is. She's on the moon. She's way up there. And the Lunars sent down this plague to kind of pressure the Earthens to kind of join in with the Lunars and share resources, because the Lunars have limited resources because they're on the moon. But the Lunars are more advanced scientifically generally, and they have magic abilities where they can do fun stuff like make themselves look different. Only in person to person, but they can still make themselves look different. So Cinder follows Cinderella, and it doesn't follow as closely as, you know, like the Disney Cinderella, but it is a very interesting book. I didn't just absolutely love Cinder. I thought it was all right. I thought it was very interesting, but it kind of dragged in a few places. I was like, this section's unnecessary, you know. Marissa Myers did a lot in it that just kind of felt like fluff. Felt unnecessary, like I said, because Fairest was very streamlined, very short book. I think it was like 5-6 hour audiobook. And Cinder was about 10 hours long, and it felt like it. Cinder was kind of eh. If you like sci-fi, young adult fiction, you might like it. The romance element in it felt very weak. Myers, in my opinion, used a cudgel to point at this thing that I thought was true, and then at the end they were like, oh, it's true, and I'm just like, oh no, the thing you mentioned 7 times came to be? I mean, yes, it is young adult, so I guess I can give it a bit of a pass there, but it was just, It's kind of exhausting. I remember doing a puzzle while I was listening to this book, and I like stopped doing my puzzle and I just looked at my phone and I was like, what the hell? It's like, why is this? Like, stop. I get it. Stop. The next book that I read was Catching Fire, which is the second book in the Hunger Games series. If you don't know how Hunger Games ends, skip until you don't see this cover right here in the corner. Okay, you gone? You gone? Okay. Katniss Everdeen survives the first book. She wins the Hunger Game. And in the second one, she experiences a lot of loss, a lot of turmoil, and she's thrown back into the Hunger Games because it's the third Quarter Quell Hunger Game, and all the Quarter Quells have special rules because it's like a celebration. This is the 75th anniversary of the rebellion not working. So they decide to kind of pit all of the victors against each other so that they weaken the rebellion against the Capitol, because at this point in the timeline, in the dystopian universe, things are starting to go down, like downhill. But I really enjoyed this book. I just got done watching the Hunger Game movies this weekend, and I watched the first two because those are the books that I read, are the first two. Like, the first movie was really rough. Like, I remember not liking the first movie at all, but I kind of enjoyed the second one. Like, I remembered more from the second one. And that's because they gave them money. The second one has a lot more money in it than the first one. I guess the first one, they didn't have funding or faith that the audience, that the viewers would really understand or take to the world. So it was interesting to see how they kind of salvaged the scraps that they took and put in the first movie into the second movie and tried to bring more threads in to reinforce it for the third and fourth movies that they made out of the third book. Catching Fire was very easy to read. It was very easy to listen to. I found myself like willingly going to bed early so that I could read more, so I could get an extra hour, get an extra 2-3 chapters in for the day. I really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the first Hunger Games, but you're a little iffy on the second one, because you're like, I already read her being in the Hunger Games, it's different and it's enjoyable. So I mentioned that there were 2 books that I did not finish. And the first book I did not finish was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, I was trying to listen to the audiobook for The Hobbit. I was not actually reading one of my 2 copies. Yes, I have 2. I don't know why. I really like 2 books, I guess. But I was not reading the physical book. I was having it read to me. And oh my god, I don't know if it's just the version that my library has for the audiobook, but I could not stand it. So, Tolkien, he's known for his long descriptions and his flowers. The audiobook I had was like, I think 4.5-5 hours long. And it just was the dwarfs talking. That was the entire audiobook, was just like the talking. It didn't have any of the descriptions. It didn't have any of that really cool stuff. It was just talking. It felt like it was created by the BBC for a talk radio show in the UK, because the accents were off by like half a drawl from each other for all the different dwarfs, and that you can't listen to it by advanced speed that I listened to them at. So it drove me absolutely crazy, and it was just really confusing. But I do plan on reading this eventually. And this is so cute. Look at these little sloths on my face. Oh my gosh. Okay, that is stinking adorable. I need to put this down, but I do plan on reading this. I guess I'll just have to sit down and read her. Wish me luck. I'm not going to do it right now, of course. But I didn't finish the Hobbit audiobook, and I'm sorry. I will soon, my love. And the second book on my did not finish, my DNF list, was Children of Virtue and Vengeance. I read the first one. I enjoyed the first one, except for the knockoff Rue character and the author crying at the end about how she wanted to make you feel things on the knockoff Rue character, that she was lining up for death. There's another rant for that. There's another day for that. The first book, I really enjoyed her world building. I really enjoyed her magic system. I thought it was fascinating. It was very interesting. It was fun. It was unique. And then it got dragged down and I just was like, bleh. Bleh. But we're not here for the first book, darling. We're here for the second book. I know I'd been waiting for it, and I was like, okay, can't wait. Excited for the second book. And then I saw it was like up and available on Libby app, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can just do the audiobook. This will be amazing, you know? And oh my God, it was a chore. Oh, I hate saying that. It was a chore to get through 21% of the book, because that's how much of the book I got through, was 21%. Oh God, I couldn't stand it. I just was so bored. I didn't remember the characters. And yeah, people are gonna be like, well, you should have reread the first one. Duh, or you should have like watched a video review of the first one to remember. My thing is that I just didn't care. I don't mean that to sound bad, but I was just like I would go outside and water my plants, and I'd be like, okay, how quickly can I do this so I don't have to listen to this book that much? And that's when I realized I've got to stop reading this. I'm not enjoying it. It's literally a chore. I very promptly returned it to the library, and the next person was able to enjoy it, and I'm glad for them. I don't mean to be mean about the book. I mean, I'm usually pretty positive about the books I read, and I try to be positive about the books I read, because I've written a first draft, and I'm beginning my edits on my first book, and so I totally understand the blood, sweat, tears, and time that goes into writing a book, and I respect that. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been my July and August wrap-up, so it's kind of a thickie. As always, let's get writing.